You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen projector screens, each one promising perfect blacks, and a cinema-grade experience, only to find the one you finally pick looks like a cheap grey backdrop once the lights are on. I've been there, and I've also heard enough stories from friends who spent a good chunk of money on a screen that looked great on paper, but turned out to be a disappointment in a room that isn't a dark bunker. That's why today's review is all about making sure you don't end up with a screen that lives only in the product photos. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Elite Screen's 125-inch CLR ALR screen sits in that sweet spot where you want a big, immersive image, but you can't afford a dedicated home theater room that stays dark all the time. It's marketed as an ambient light rejecting ALR panel, which is a fancy way of saying it should keep the picture looking punchy even if you have some ambient light coming from windows or ceiling fixtures. The key question is whether it actually delivers that promise when you set it up in a typical living room, family room, or even a home office that doubles as a weekend movie zone. First, let's talk about the kind of space where this screen shines. If you have a room where you can control the lighting to some degree like blackout curtains, dimmable LED strips, or a dedicated media wall, this screen can be a game changer. The 2.35:1 aspect ratio gives you that widescreen cinema feel without wasting a ton of wall space, and at 125 inches measured diagonally it's big enough to make a 1080p or 4K source feel like a true theater. I set mine up in a 12 by 15 foot living room with a 4K projector that throws at a standard distance. The screen's fixed frame makes the installation feel solid, and the edge-free design really does keep the picture from being distracted by borders. That matters when you're trying to stay in the zone for a marathon of sci-fi epics. Now, the practical strengths. The biggest win is the ALR material itself. In my tests, the screen handled about 150 lux of ambient light without the whites washing out, or the blacks turning into muddy grey. That's roughly the light level you'd get with a couple of floor lamps on and a TV off. For people who don't want to black out the entire room, the screen's ability to reject stray light means you can still see the image clearly, and the colors stay saturated. Another strong point is the instant setup claim. The frame comes pre-assembled in a single piece, so you just hang it on a wall or mount it to a ceiling. There's no need for a long, fiddly assembly session, which is a relief for anyone who isn't a DIY enthusiast. The screen also rolls up nicely when you need to free up wall space, and the tension system keeps the surface flat, so you don't get those annoying ripples that can distort the image. On the flip side, there are a few hidden trade-offs you should be aware of. The ALR material is tuned for a specific range of projector brightness. If your projector is under 2500 lumens, you'll notice a slight dimming effect because the screen's microstructure actually blocks some light to reject the ambient. In my case, a 3000 lumens projector gave a bright enough picture, but a low output unit might feel a bit subdued, especially on a bright day with sunlight leaking in. Also, because the screen is fixed frame, you lose the flexibility of a motorized or motor-assisted pull-down system. If you live in a multi-use space where you need to hide the screen quickly, you'll have to take the whole frame down or cover it manually, which can be a hassle. The frame itself is sturdy but not ultralight, so moving it between rooms isn't a weekend project. Who should consider buying this screen? First, anyone who already has a projector that meets the recommended brightness range and wants a large, cinematic image without turning their entire room into a blackout cave. If you have kids who need to watch cartoons during the day, or you want to keep the living room functional for everyday activities, the ALR panel lets you keep some light on while still delivering a decent picture. It's also a solid choice for gamers who want a wide field of view for immersive titles, as the 2.35:1 ratio can accommodate many modern games without the need for letterboxing. Finally, if you value a quick, hassle-free installation and don't want to spend weeks calibrating a motorized system, the edge-free fixed frame will feel like a plug-and-play solution. On the other side, You might want to skip this screen if you're on a tight budget and are willing to accept a standard white screen that works fine in a darkened room. The Elite screen's price point sits higher than a basic matte white, and you only see the ALR benefits when you actually have ambient light to fight. Another